He is a local music sensation, and you can catch him this Saturday downtown at the Depot. We're talking to Ryan Harmon next on the Spotlight.
I ain't saying that it made me, it helped raise me. It's where the good Lord saved me. And He gave me 3 cores and truth to testify, and it's home to me. It's all I've ever known to be. All it's in my soul, stone cold certified, American born and country fried.
Coming to you from the beautiful Olathe building in downtown Russellville, we welcome you into the Spotlight on this Thursday. My name is Drew Brent. If you're in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today. It's 479-968-5668 or cruise on over to russellvilleliving.com. You might have noticed that intro sounded a little bit different. That is Country Fried from Ryan Harmon's latest album when he joins us now here on the Spotlight. Those dulcet tones never get old for me, brother. Welcome into the show.
Good to see you again, my friend. Thanks for having me back, too. That's the biggest compliment for me, is being asked back. There's a lot of places that might ask me once.
Right.
Like I did Game for Change about a month or two ago, and I think they're probably surprised that I finished talking.
Right.
I think it was supposed to be like, hour, 2 hours, and they'd ask me a question, and I'd start getting into this story and go on for an hour, and like we would normally do.
Right.
Boy, bless their hearts.
Well,
They were too nice to me.
Hey, let me tell you something. The first time I was on Game for Change, I think we did 3 hours. And it was so much fun. I cannot wait for their season premiere here in the next little bit. I don't know who they got coming in. Maybe they can have both of us on here. I mean, that'd be a 7-hour show, but it'd be super.
Well,
it'd be big time for them.
I'm saying it right now. I want to do that. I want, and I don't care if they put like the debate timer in front of us, whatever they got to do. But I want to go back and do that show again. That was awesome.
That was a lot of fun. Ketchum has done a great job putting that show together, and of course we're proud of it because it's powered by Olathe Realty, and we're very excited to have Game for Change coming back pretty soon. I'll tell you what I'm excited to have back. I'm excited to have Ryan Harmon back in Russellville for Downtown at Sundown coming up this Saturday at 7 o'clock. The 2 acts this Saturday, Ryan Harmon and Nick and Sam, 2 local acts that have gone on to big time success. I mean, walk me through it. Is it good to come home again?
Well, it always is, especially because being from Lamar, you kind of have like a 30 or 40 mile radius that you call your backyard.
Right.
So anything that's from Clarksville-ish to Russellville-ish, and even Conway at this point is kind of considered my stomping grounds, more or less. But Arkansas Tech is my, if I may invoke a little French, my alma mater.
Wow. Now that is some high quality.
Now, see, when I was a little kid, if somebody talked about an alma mater, that meant they were going to the Catfish Hole.
Hey, now let me tell you something. Now there's 2 locations of the legendary Catfish Hole. You cannot miss that. There's the one in Alma, and there's the one in Fayetteville. That's a game day tradition. You can't miss out on that.
That's right.
Hey, dude, is there any better hush puppies in the state of Arkansas?
None anywhere. And
Yeah.
I just can't. I've had that argument with people before that have had them and said, "Oh, it's not really my thing." I'm like, "Well, that's okay. You're wrong, and we'll have to work on it, but
Right.
That's okay."
We're gonna pray that you get saved pretty soon.
Exactly.
We're gonna have to work on that. This Saturday, what can we expect? What are we gonna see from Ryan Harmon?
Man, this is going to be the summer blowout for me. This, to me, is the way that I like to do summer shows. And I've done music downtown at Sundown once before. I was thinking about this the other day because I was thinking, man, I'm so glad to finally be doing this. Then I went, wait a minute, I actually did do like either the first or second year that they were doing it, when it was still the docking station.
Yeah.
That was the stage there, where the big, beautiful stage is now. It was just the loading dock. Which worked perfectly as a stage. But I did that. It was me, Brickfields.
Okay. Wow.
And then Buddy Case and friends, which as we're doing this now, Buddy Case is in the hospital right now battling some health issues, and really hoping that he gets well. Last thing I heard was he was starting to kind of make a turn for the better, so we hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
Love Buddy Case, man. He's just not only one of the greatest talents in Arkansas, but one of the greatest people.
Right. Hey, you talk about being downtown at sundown for the second time. The Runners, my group, we've gotten to play twice. And we played a lot of different shows, a lot of different venues, much like you have, except you played significantly different venues and bigger venues than we have. But I will tell you this, and you tell me if you agree with this. There is a different environment downtown at the depot. When you've got, Miss Pat out there, my gorgeous mother-in-law out there dancing, and you got the kiddos running around, and you can see people having a good time. There's nothing really quite like that, is there?
No, man, you can't beat that. And that's I'm glad we have that now.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time, especially when I started playing music, where there was nothing like that. And especially when I started, I was about 13, 14 when I started performing publicly. And the only places I could play were the occasional coffee house,
right,
and the Arkansas-Oklahoma State Fair in Fort Smith. That was it. I'd have maybe 2 shows a year. There was nothing else. We certainly didn't have, even at that point, it was a few years before they started doing the concert series downtown. There was nothing around Clarksville, Russellville, anything like that. I mean, Clarksville had Crosswoods, but I wasn't even old enough to get in, let alone old enough to play.
Right.
So it was just a lot of years of just kind of wishing, and just, it seemed like people would always talk about, when they were growing up and wanting to play music, it seemed like the Grand Ole Opry was a million miles away. Well, to me, like Sticky Fingers in Little Rock was a million miles away,
yeah.
And George's in Fayetteville was a million miles away. It just seemed like everything was so out of reach. But now, the fact that we're building stuff like that around here, and I don't mean building as in like physically, but of course we do now. We've got a beautiful facility downtown, but the fact that we're building that sense of culture and the arts and entertainment here, there's not a better place to do it than Russellville.
Not at all. And that leads me to another point that I've talked with you about this privately, and I think on the show last time, I've talked to Rob McCormick, I've talked to H, I've talked to a lot of these guys. I believe that Russellville has the most underutilized and underrated music scene in the state of Arkansas. And it's primarily because there is really only 2 or 3 places in town to play. I guess Mud Ducks counts now,
right,
since they're back. But you've got the Old Bank, you've got Depot, you've got, the Mud Ducks over there, maybe the occasional VFW. But these are not shows that, some of those venues are not shows that propel you into that next level. But the artistry here, when we talk about a Ryan Harmon, we talk about a Nick and Sam. Jeremy Huddleston has produced music for network television. Some guy named Rob. The music scene here, heck, the Wandering Troubadours. There's great musicians here.
Of course, man.
Have you seen another scene with so much talent that's really, in my opinion, underutilized?
The only thing that rivals it to me, and again, I'd say this probably because it's all my backyard technically, like I said earlier, but Russellville and Conway. And there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that and it's really, I understand that Conway is considered Central Arkansas, but it's part of that overlap.
Yeah.
You have groups like Mr. Lucky where, Chuck Pack plays in the open jam band at TC's in Conway, and like him and Mark both from Mr. Lucky do like 2 or 3 other bands that play in Conway a lot, and Russellville and Dardanelle, and there's a lot of crossover there, and I think that's a healthy thing too, because it kind of breaks down those silos that used to be there. Well, there's Northwest Arkansas musicians, and there's River Valley musicians, and there's Jonesboro, Texarkana. Now there's a lot more of a melting pot going on, which I love to see. Exactly. That's what we needed from the get-go. But the level of talent that we have here is something that you wouldn't really think about until you see it.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing it. And the fact that we have, and I love the fact that Mud Ducks is open now. That's a great place. We kind of needed a honky-tonk again, man. This is not only a perfect place for that downtown arts and culture vibe, but man, it's still Russellville, Arkansas. We need a honky-tonk. And the fact that they've got that open now, they got the right people in charge of it, and they're doing it the right way, and everything I've heard so far is they've been having great turnouts and just a lot of satisfied customers. And there's a strong rumor that a group that I'm playing with a little bit called Try It Quiet might be there later this year.
You know, I cannot wait for that show if that happens, because between you and Sharp Dunaway, there's enough charisma on that stage to just blow one out. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I wanted to circle back to something you said a few minutes ago, and that was, you know, this melting pot of Arkansas musicians. Well, now you're starting to see kind of that blend. There's, I think, a bit of a misconception among people who are outside the industry that think that musicians, you know, are super competitive, and, you know, if somebody's playing this gig, then they're upset that somebody else has got that gig. And I've not gotten that vibe. I've gotten the vibe that it's, while competitive, it's friendly competition, and you want to see everybody else succeed. Do you agree with that sentiment?
You're exactly right. And when I was a little kid trying to start playing, I did feel that competitive nature.
Yeah.
Just because, and it was because not only did I not have the experience to do a lot of the things that I thought I could do at that point, I certainly wasn't good enough. And thank goodness that a lot of the little demos and things I was making at the time, nobody ever heard. And I don't want to hear them myself either, to tell you the truth. But it was, you put yourself where you want to be. And it's all a matter of doing what you need to do and putting in the work to get to any point. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. But if you have that thought in your mind that everything's against you and that everybody else is getting what they want and you're not getting anything, and, oh, well, so-and-so's playing at this place, why can't I play there? Well, but there was a time when they wanted to play there and didn't.
Yeah.
And it's not an immediate thing for anybody. But if you're part of a family of musicians like we have here, you have, people always say, well, it's who you know. You know somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and it really is, like you said, it's kind of a tribal thing almost, you know, so to speak, of everybody is really bonded together. And the only time when there's any kind of a, kind of an abrasive vibe is when somebody kind of dogs one of your people.
Yeah.
And that's when the rest of the music scene will rally around, and that's the coolest thing, is I've seen musicians in Arkansas supporting other musicians who maybe have had somebody kind of slam them or, you know, blow them off a little bit. You know, that there's a lot of that. So it's not really, there is, like you said, there's that friendly competition of, and you see it a lot when these musicians play together. That's when it's really cool, is when you see these impromptu jams.
The audience wins when that happens.
Exactly. And that competition comes out then, because it's like, oh yeah, well, I play it this way.
Right.
You know, it's like, did you ever watch the Eagles documentary, History of the
Yes.
Eagles? It's like Joe Walsh said, there was friendly competition between him and Felder, where one would play something, the other go, oh yeah, well, listen to this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the show, they walk off and they're like, man, that was the best thing we've ever done. Can't wait to do it again. That's the competition level we have around here. But aside from that, it's everybody wanting to see everyone have the same amount of success. Everybody wants to see everybody do well. And every time that you go play a new venue that you're excited about, and you send a message to all your buddies afterward and say, guys, you need to get in touch with these people. You're going to love this place. That's how you know the kind of vibe we have around here.
You know, you mentioned the Eagles documentary and that friendly competition. Did you ever see the While My Guitar Gently Weeps collaboration with Prince?
Oh my
and
gosh.
Tom Petty and I can't remember who else was on there.
Jeff Lynne.
Yes.
Um,
And Steve Winwood, I think, was playing at that time. Maybe it was his son.
George Harrison's son was up
George,
there.
yeah.
My gosh, you said Tom Petty. It's hard for me to not see Mike Campbell there, but I don't think he was.
No, I don't
anyway, yeah.
That you watch Prince, and you know they've already had a tremendous song, and everything is great. And you see Prince kind of come on stage, and you watch because he's got that look, and people who have played before know that look of, all right, that was good, but I'm about to blow the lid off this thing, and he murders a guitar solo for about 3.5 minutes. One of the best I've ever heard. That's when the audience wins right there, because everybody else on stage is just kind of looking back, going, oh, "Okay, yeah, I get it. That was awesome. Brent's doing his thing." That's when the audience really, really wins. I want to circle back to something that you said a few minutes ago, that Russellville needs a honky tonk, and you'll appreciate this question more than anybody else I've asked, because we have very similar musical tastes. How I'm a big fan of the story song, and we lost one of the greats this week when it comes to story songs in Tom T. Hall. He is one of those guys, in my view, that not underrated, but maybe underappreciated for
That's
the
right.
work that he did. Um, are there others aside from Tom T. Hall that you think, these were really good mainstream people? They don't really get the love that they should.
Absolutely. Another one that comes to mind immediately is Roger Miller when you talk about mainstream.
King of the Road, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing is everybody knows King of the Road, everybody knows Dang Me.
Yeah.
But aside from that, if you start talking about, well, One Dying and a Burying, it just nobody knows that song. But have you ever heard that one? It's kind of a grim song, but One Dying and a Burying, some crying, six carrying me, I want to be free.
Yeah.
It's a sad song, and unfortunately, country music doesn't really want to have sad songs anymore, and it's kind of to the point where I might as well say it. I'm halfway through the sentence. No need sugarcoating it now. But it's like now everything has to be upbeat and positive. Well, life ain't always that way.
Well,
and we need country music that's. There's nothing wrong with having the upbeat, positive stuff, because sometimes that's how the day's going, and you need that song that's going to pump you up for it. But when you've had a terrible day and you've had something tragic happen, you want to know that somebody else went through that, or at least understands it. That's why I love writers like that. Tom T. had some. You listen to the Ballad of $40. It's at the end of that song. Tom T. Hall said, it was watching the widow come through at this funeral and watching all the mourners, and he's like, well, I kind of knew the guy, but I'm gonna just stay back and act like I didn't really know him. And he wants to go up and give his condolences. Trouble is, the fella owed me $40. Yeah, that's how the song ends. It's like, how do I even approach this subject? That level of writing we just don't see anymore. But yet, Tom T., Roger Miller, John Prine, who unfortunately didn't quite get all the recognition he deserved until right before he died.
And there were so many mainstream people that when he passed, there were tweets all over talking about how great John Prine was, what a big influence he was. And I would submit to you this. You tell me if you agree. I think Steve Earle is going to have that same kind of effect, in that outstanding songwriter, not really appreciated in his time beyond Copperhead Road, but that's not even his best song.
And he would tell you that too.
By even a stretch of the imagination. But I promise you that Steve Earle was a lot of the influence, like these guys with Whiskey Myers or Cody Johnson, some of the outlaw Texas country folks now. Man, those are Steve Earle bands in the same way that you're talking about Tom T. Hall.
I completely agree. And Steve Earle's one of the few that he actually, if you listen closely to some of the people who came out at the same time as him, he influenced some of his peers.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Usually, like I said, that little bit of friendly competition. Certainly, there aren't going to be a ton of artists that influence their peers, because everybody's going to think, well, I'm doing my own thing, and they'll do their thing. Right. But you can listen to music that came even just a few years later from some of the people that were his contemporaries, and you can hear some of the influence start to rub off. And he was writing some of their songs too.
Yeah.
So that influence was always going to be there. But yeah, Steve Earle for sure. And of course he got his big start in the '80s, and in the '90s really transformed into the Steve Earle that we know today. But he was part of that '70s group. That's when he came to town. That's when he was in with Guy Clark, Rodney Crowell, Emmylou Harris. He was in that original wave of '70s Texas artists. Just didn't get his major label break until the '80s, but for sure and I believe it was last year he got inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, rightfully so.
Right.
But I agree with you 100%. He'll be there.
Do we have anybody in mainstream country music right now that will be remembered as fondly as the guys like Cash, Waylon, Willie, the outlaw country guys that kind of set the tone.
Mm.
Here, my argument to that is they will be remembered, but not in the same way. I don't know that we've got that legend out there right now.
I think Eric Church is
Okay.
probably Eric Church and Miranda Lambert. I would say are probably the two that will break through to that kind of appreciation and that kind of remembrance. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have been not only so unique, but they've defined a lot of the elements that have become common in country music right now. And Eric did so at a price at first because he couldn't get anybody to give him the time of day for the first few years because they're like, oh, we can't work with this guy. But once they saw that it started working, then they wanted everybody to take a note out of his book. The same thing happened with Miranda Lambert. I mean, you think about it, she was on Nashville Star. And usually anybody that is on a TV show like that, there's always the risk of once the hype from the TV show starts to go away and the next season comes on, well, that artist is going to be forgotten about because they're always going to be attached to that TV show. A lot of people who are hardcore Miranda Lambert fans might not even know or remember that she was on there because she has so far surpassed anything to do with that TV show. She's not remembered for being on Nashville Star now. She's remembered for being Miranda Lambert.
I would say that same argument could apply for Carrie Underwood in that I forgot completely she was on American Idol and she's become a superstar. But that's not really... I've seen this, and you know, you've had an American Idol experience, so we could talk about that a little bit. It's my opinion that unless you were a Carrie Underwood or a Kelly Clarkson, being on the show is almost better than winning the show, just because you get that exposure, but you're still not necessarily tied to it. Is that accurate to you, or?
Well, it really, and whenever I made the decision after they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I was really kind of thinking on it, and I decided I'd go ahead and do it, I had looked at the last few years of the show just to kind of see who was on there, is there anybody I recognized, because I don't watch a whole lot of TV. It's kind of one of those things that we were talking before because we both have a TV and journalism background. It's kind of one of those things that, you know, if you're a magician, you don't end up going to a lot of magic shows because you've seen how the tricks are done.
Exactly.
So I can watch a TV show and just go, okay, that's how they made that cut. Okay, you know, and it's
hard to watch the news.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very hard to watch the news.
It's exactly right. You know, you can always tell whenever they're getting the vamp signal.
Yeah. Exactly. My wife does not like watching specific TV shows with me anymore because I will do you know how they did this, and it dawns on me about 10 minutes into my dissertation on how they did this particular thing. She doesn't care not one bit about how they did that. She just wants me to shut up so she can watch the show.
That's a lot of my family has gotten to the point where they don't really want to hear me talk about it anymore because I'll tell them, you know, well, this news station is doing this, and this one's doing this, and this one's a little better at this, but this one kind of cuts corners here, and you know, I'll kind of break it down to them that none of them are perfect, and here's what they're doing, but they're just like, we just want to know what's going on. We don't want to hear the behind the scenes stuff.
I like sausage. I don't want to know how the sausage is made.
Exactly.
We are talking to Ryan Harmon. He's always one of my favorite guests. Of course, if you are in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today. It's 479-968-5668 or cruise on over to RussellvilleLiving.com. Ryan, if you can't get enough of Ryan, and I'm sure that you cannot, will be on our Carve radio show coming up tomorrow morning at 8:30. He will join Kristen Pearson as one of our guests. That's the Spotlight on KARV, AM 610 and 93.1 FM tomorrow morning at 8:30. I wanted to ask you a question. You're wearing a KISS shirt.
Okay. But before we do that, if you don't mind, I really didn't answer your last question. I kind of went off on another tangent, but I'll give you the answer to the American Idol thing and where the benefit is.
Sure.
It's knowing how to use your appearance. It's knowing how to make the most of what you got on there. And not to take all the romance out of my appearance on there. And, of course, I never could have imagined the response that I got from it. I thought it would be kind of a mild reaction because I was only on one time.
Right.
There are very few people who've been on one time that were able to build something from that. Of course, you know, William Hung comes to mind. She bangs, she bangs, she booms, she booms. But I don't think anybody could ever really top that.
Yeah, but that was for all the wrong reasons.
It was, but you know what?
He's genius.
Yeah, and he had the right attitude about it, and he's gone on now. He's like a motivational speaker, and he really is. A lot of people, just his vibe, and how he's been able to really build himself up from that, where anybody else would just be totally discouraged and want to go into hiding for years.
Right.
He embraced it, and that was, I think that really was a turning point for shows like that, where everybody realized, okay, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out. If it's something you want to do, give it a shot. But for me, and I know it sounds like it's easy to say now, hindsight's always 20/20.
Sure.
Honest to God, I didn't think I was going to get further than I got. And exactly what happened, I was pretty much right on the money. And I don't want to take all the romance out of it, but I was working in marketing before I did that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of knew how to build off it, and I kind of already had a plan in place. So I knew and I didn't know till the week before for sure that my segment was going to air, because they didn't know for sure. It's a week-by-week thing of building each episode and saying, okay, here's everything we've got to pick from, what's going to work the best. Right. There's some that they knew from the get-go they were going to use, because it's people who, made it way, way further in the show than I did. So, of course, they would need to use them. But for people who were only on once, maybe twice, there's a whole lot more to choose from. So the fact that I got on it all is just a blessing, because there were hundreds of people that you never saw.
Sure.
But I knew if this thing airs, I need to have the single out immediately, to where as soon as people hear it, if they like it, they can go find it on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever. I need to have an acoustic video ready to go of the full song, so that way if people like the way that I did it with just me and a guitar, they can go hear the full song immediately just like that. I need to have a new website layout that I can publish as soon as it airs. I need to have my social media ready to go and have a post on there acknowledging the appearance and welcoming new people to my page. So as great as it is to think of it all as just, it just kind of fell into the, and I did fall backwards into it as far as being asked to do it and make it onto the show. But building off of it from there, I kind of knew what I was doing. And that's where it is thinking about, where do you want to go from here? And how do you get there? And what do you need to do to make the most of it? It's not as simple as, well, I was on TV, now I'm on Easy Street.
Right.
It's almost a little harder whenever you're on TV doing something like that, because then there's kind of this pressure. It's like, okay, you've got this great opportunity. This door has been opened. And that's the thing. Even though they said no, that doesn't mean the door was closed. A huge door was opened with that.
Right.
Because I had a chance to showcase what I do on a national show that has an international audience. So if you don't figure out some way to use that to your benefit and try to build off of that, that's your own fault. It's an incredible opportunity to have. So it's about still putting in the work and recognizing, okay, it's not that I have this opportunity to be a star.
Right.
It's I have an opportunity to do more work. It's never going to be easy. Nothing's ever going to be handed to you. Everything you're going to have to work for, but you've got the opportunity to work for it. So that's what it is to me.
That's interesting. I make the comparison, when you say it like that, to the old Johnny Carson Tonight Show. And you're really just looking for one appearance. If you get on the Tonight Show one time back in the Carson days, you were made. Drew Carey was made. Louis Anderson was made.
That's
Jerry
right.
Seinfeld was made. Jeff Foxworthy was made. Just by that one appearance. Because now all of a sudden they're getting booked all over the country because they had this appearance. And it was all about, too, I mean, now they had, managers and that kind of thing who said, hey, you need to book this out, and you need to book this out, and you need to book this out. But you're your own guy. You knew what you had to do. And I think, too, I talked to Rob McCormick about this. Creative types, especially musicians, don't necessarily like to think about the business side of that. But your broadcast and marketing background kind of really meshes well with that, doesn't it?
It does, for sure. And that's the other thing, is the way that my segment on the show started. If you go watch the full thing, which it's still on YouTube, somebody had put it on there, and the American Idol channel on YouTube takes down auditions from the previous season as they go along, but there's still, I think a couple of accounts had it uploaded, so you can find it on there. If you can't, let me know and we'll figure it out. But the way that my whole segment starts is with me saying, on a scale of 9 to 10, how do I look? And it was the behind the scenes, the before, the day before we did the pre-interview for that. The reason why I use that line is because having that broadcasting background, out of the corner of my eye, I'm looking for that red light. Because they say, okay, we're gonna start here in just a couple minutes. Well, they want that off guard, of you, kind of.
Right.
That wrinkle in your shirt, kind of buttoning yourself up, putting your mic on. They want just a little bit of that B-roll put in there. So I knew the red light's going to come on and they're going to start filming before they say that they're filming. And most people who were auditioning there that day wouldn't have known that because, they don't know how the sausage was made.
Right, exactly.
We were in the factory.
Right, exactly. So, we were on the line.
Exactly. So I was looking out of the corner of my eye for that red light, and I saw it come on, and before he could even say anything, I spouted off that line because I'm thinking, man, if nothing else, they can use that. Because I thought of that a few years ago, and I'm so proud of that line.
Yeah,
on a scale of 9 to 10, how do I look? If that doesn't boost your self-confidence, my friends, nothing will. And it puts people in an awkward place where they can't answer you honestly because you've given them such a small space to answer in. Not on a scale of 1 to 10, 9 to 10. I know it's at least a 9.
Right.
So at the worst, I'm almost radiant.
Right. I'm borderline radiant. From a TV producer side, I worked as a producer for years, and those are the moments that you say, oh, this is gold. This guy's great for TV. He may not be the guy that we're going to have win, but he's a guy that is going to keep viewers engaged. He's the one that's going to, which is sort of the idea behind William Hung even, is that it's not always, at first it was about who could sing the best. But now you've got YouTube for that. Now you have so many other platforms. It's who can be entertaining. Right. Beyond anything else, and that's why when you said Eric Church a few minutes ago, I'm thinking that makes a lot of sense because there are a lot of these artists that aren't appreciated in their time for being as entertaining, not just prolific songwriters, not being great musicians, because you have to have those two things anyway to be in that upper echelon. But if you're a great entertainer on top of it, that's what makes a superstar. And you had that understanding from the get-go.
Absolutely. That's the kind of music I was raised on. Mm-hmm. So I had seen a lot of the biographies and things and kind of knew ahead of time. Well, not when I first started, but whenever I really started trying to do this more as kind of an advanced hobby, doing it as often as I could, playing 15, 20 dates a year when I could, and then now doing it professionally. I've kind of been able to, because I was smart enough to listen to other people and listen to where the holes were in their stories and listen to what their trials and tribulations were, there's some things I can kind of sidestep because I can see it coming, right. Which is a really smart thing. But yeah, and you mentioned earlier when we were talking, you mentioned Carrie Underwood too. I'm ashamed of myself for not thinking of her on that, but I think that is pretty symbolic of how overlooked she's been by the industry. They love getting the positive effects of her success, and she's one of the most successful country artists out there and has been for a very long time. She's had this consistent level of success probably longer than anybody else. Yeah. There are only maybe Garth Brooks and Shania Twain are the only other two artists in country music you could even compare to where Carrie Underwood still is after all this time. But I think she'll be remembered that same way. I think it'll unfortunately take a little bit longer. But I think that by the time that she starts really getting that recognition, I think that people are going to start saying, "Man, what took them so long?" She kept this industry alive when it was on the verge of destruction. Because early 2000s were not the happiest of times for country music. Yeah, you had Kenny Chesney that was going and doing stadium tours, and you had Brooks and Dunn, Montgomery Gentry, George Strait was still putting out great records, but it wasn't. They didn't have that formula of success from a business standpoint that they have right now. And Carrie Underwood really helped build that.
And I may be committing blasphemy as it pertains to my family, and I may not be invited to Christmas when I say this. You said they still had George Strait in the early 2000s. I kind of disagree with you. That early 2000s album where he puts out, it was a single he put out, it was called Run. That didn't sound like George Strait.
I love that song.
I did not like that song at all because that wasn't, and he's done. He's gone. We'll be right back after this, folks. No, I didn't like the song at all. It was such a far cry from things like Amarillo by Morning and The Fire. And I know that you need to evolve as an artist, but it felt like he had fallen into the trap of that pop country early 2000s vibe where Rascal Flatts was coming up and you had Emerson Drive for a cup of coffee, and it just, to me, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I understand that, and that's a good point. I listen to The Fireman, and I hear that, oddly enough. I know that's one of his classics, but that to me sounds a little bit like, okay, that's what everybody else was doing at the time, kind of the more rockin' stuff. Mm-hmm. Or Heartland, a little more rockin' than what you would expect from George Strait. But he is a good enough singer and a good enough artist and a good enough interpreter of songs that he can make it work. There are very few songs in his catalog that I can't find something admirable about. And it's, you know, and even songs like Run, She'll Leave You with a Smile. You know,
I did like that one.
There are songs like that where it did fit in quite a bit with what was going on commercially at the time, but it still had that quality. Nobody has George Strait's voice. Nobody has his interpretation. He's one of those guys that, a lot like Johnny Cash, not so much about the tone or the quality of his voice. It's about how the story comes across.
Right. He's
a storytelling singer. And of course, George Strait, I think he's a tremendous singer. Johnny Cash, you know, Eddie, you talk about saying something blasphemous, but I think if people think about it, they'll understand where I'm coming from. Johnny Cash was not a technically great singer.
Yeah.
Now, and this is coming from another not technically great singer. But it's somebody who, you do what you do, and you play to your strong points. And Johnny Cash played to his strong points better than anybody else. He knew what he did. He wasn't going to try to out-sing Pavarotti.
Right.
He was going to try to out-storytell Christofferson. That's what he did, you know. And sometimes he was telling Christofferson stories.
Yeah.
But even Chris would tell you Johnny Cash was the guy.
Well, I mean, Chris Christopherson was one of those guys that would even say, hey, I wasn't a great singer. And he was not, by any stretch. But he belonged in that Highwaymen group of people because of that storytelling vibe. You go back and listen to Cash and Waylon and Willie, and Merle even fits into this, Merle Haggard. And we have lost some of our niche audience, I know that, but you got to learn today. Merle should have been in that Highwaymen group too, just because that was the outlaw storytelling group. And while Christofferson wasn't, I didn't think he was as good of a guitar player. Certainly not. If you watch the Highwaymen live in New York, it's from Nassau Coliseum back in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
There is a moment where we talk about that friendly competition a little bit ago. There is a moment when I think they're doing Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way? Christofferson picks out a little lead. It's okay. And then Waylon just looks over at him and demolishes him. I mean, absolutely obliterates him. But I digress. Those were the moments, and those guys. There's just not those people anymore. I know I sound like an old guy now, but I can't see that storytelling. That's why I like your music so much, because it sounds more like what I like.
I appreciate that, man. And I'm not going to kid myself by acting like I've got that level of talent or anything. That just goes back to that's the kind of influence that I have. So you're a product of your influence and of your surroundings, and that's what I've surrounded myself with. You know, I ended up writing this essay the other night after I got done playing a show about 2 o'clock in the morning. For some reason, it didn't come out as a song. It came out as more of an essay of just kind of where I feel like I'm at right now in life. I'm never going to fit in with what the trends are, but that's kind of by choice. I don't want to. You know, we've reached a point where it's kind of the TikTok generation in country music, where you've got to have a catchy song with a good beat and have a TikTok dance with it. that just drives me up the wall.
Right, exactly.
To be honest, I've got no problem with anybody else doing it, and people have fun with it, and it brings them happiness, and it puts a smile on people's faces, and it brings a lot of enjoyment to people, and that's great. We need that, but I just don't feel like that's something I can offer. You know,
Right.
I didn't grow up with that, and there's just a lot of stuff right now in country music that just doesn't fit the bill to me. I think that it's important. I understand that we need to have the melting pot, but I think it's still important to have defining elements of a genre. I think that's still important, and I wish it was to everybody else too. And I understand that it won't be, and I understand that everybody wants to make the argument, well, country music has to evolve. The more I've thought about it, I don't think it's evolved, because when you talk about evolution, you look at the chart of evolution. When it evolved, there were improvements along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not trying to dog it. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying it's not. It's like if you had the evolution chart and it went from monkey to man, so to speak. Well, then all of a sudden it went to moose.
Yeah,
It was like,
it's like-
okay, well it's still evolving, but it's not the same
Right.
organism. We're talking something totally different here. And I'm just going to say, a lot of people are sick of hearing this argument, and I get it, but I think we need to have the argument because it's important to people like us. I'm roping you in on this,
All right, well, I'm here. Here we go. Let's do it.
When the storytelling element is gone and the music matches what you're hearing on other stations with different formats like pop stations or rock stations, and you have songs that could so easily cross over without it being that big of a deal anymore, I have a problem with that. I think that you have to have, there's no other genre where you could get away with that. You couldn't have a song on the rock charts with fiddle and steel guitar where you tell a story. They're not going to let that fly. Even Aaron Lewis has to separate the two.
Yeah.
It's
two entirely different shows.
It is, and I'm just, it's a little discouraging because you think, okay, I have to compete. I've got to write this kind of stuff like everybody else is writing. And yeah, I can. If you try hard enough and you really go, okay, so this is kind of what's working, but is that really what I want to do? Is that who I am? That's not what it is. I mean, I listen to some of this stuff nowadays where there's no storytelling element at all, and there's nothing for me to relate to. It's nothing about emotion. It's nothing about the human condition. It's nothing about things we go through in life, good or bad. It's to the point where it's not even party songs. It's just kind of there, and I just wonder sometimes if they played Mad Libs and said, okay, press record. I just don't know how it happened, but I have to, sometimes I just want to drive right into the middle of Nashville, get out of my car and scream at the top of my lungs, what happened? We used to have Merle Haggard. How did we get to this point?
It's funny you mentioned that because I make the argument that some of that still exists. It just gets it takes a while to get back to the mainstream, and then once it gets to the mainstream, people like us get aggravated because it went mainstream. But
well, I love it when it goes mainstream. I just wish more of it would, and I wish it would stick around. I mean, you look at Chris Stapleton.
It changes if it goes mainstream. That's the thing. A lot of times,
fair point.
It takes what was unique about that artist. I'll give you a great example of a guy who's gone mainstream and has been able to survive. You had just mentioned Stapleton. I want you to elaborate on that in a minute. I think of a guy like Sturgill Simpson, who is crazy. I mean, absolutely insane. But his music is very real, very, at times, like you may be on a trip. Another group is my favorite group right now is Whiskey Myers. They came out of that East Texas country scene, and they're still telling storytelling songs. Now they sound more like Skinnerd.
Right.
But we need a little bit of that.
We do.
We need a little bit of that. And I got so frustrated when you mentioned, you cannot get away with that in any other genre. what was that? The Get Up, and they played that on country radio, and that's fine in maybe a dance hall setting or something like that, but that you lose what the genre was supposed to be about.
And thank you for bringing that song up, because that's one of many that had that kind of that TikTok dance element with it. But here's my argument: in the '90s, you still had Garth Brooks, even though he was selling more records than anybody and more tickets than anybody, and he incorporated rock and pop and a lot of different things, but he had storytelling songs, and he still had those elements.
He also had Chris Gaines, but
he did. Bless his heart. That had the movie come out, I don't think that we'd remember that as poorly as we do now, but I think the fact that they almost got a little too much of a jump on it. Okay, let's go ahead and put the soundtrack out. Well, then the movie never came out. I feel like a lot of people who worked on that project kind of left him out to dry with that.
Oh, absolutely, they did.
But Shania Twain. You can make all the argument you want that because she had Mutt Lange producing her, so her records sound like Def Leppard. Right. But that's what she wanted. But there were still storytelling elements. It was still there. You listen to Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under? That, I don't care how well that goes over in the dance halls or anything, you can still listen to that song. There's still elements in that song where I say that's country music. No One Needs to Know right now. One of my favorite songs of hers that, even though it was a big hit, it still kind of gets overlooked with some of her other stuff. But you would have never in a million years heard the club mix of Cotton Eye Joe on country radio in the 90s when it came out. But now anything like that comes out, they want to immediately put into the mainstream with everything else. And my argument about the evolution chart started with Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Waiting for a Train. It wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels. I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. And as it moved along, you had Merle Haggard singing about his life in prison. Yeah. The years that he spent there, really thinking he was never going to get out. The warden led a prisoner down the hallway to his doom. And I stood up to say goodbye like all the rest.
Sing You Back Home was one of my favorite songs.
It's really hard for me to listen to a song with hip-hop drum loops, half rapping, half singing, and sometimes they put that like T-Pain auto-tune on it to give it that more pop sound, where they want you to know it's auto-tune, know, because it's got that kind of neat sound to it. But I can't listen to a song like that where the lyrics aren't there, where there isn't a storytelling element, and call it the same genre as Sing Me Back Home. And a lot of the music that's on country radio right now is great music. I just don't think it's in the right genre. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's bad music. There's good and bad, and there were songs, believe me, Waylon and Willie, not everything sounded like that in the 70s.
No.
There were songs that were big on the charts then that we don't even remember now because they didn't pass the test of time. So there's always been good and bad. I just wish that we embraced the defining elements of the genre a little bit more, because I think that that's what really sets it apart, and sometimes it needs to be set apart because it's a cultural thing. If we blended cultures around the world like we have sometimes in music just for commercialization, everybody's going to lose their identity to where there's not going to be that proud part of you that can talk to your grandkids one day, and you can start showing the family heritage, and and going down the family tree with them, and getting some of grandma's old quilts out on the floor and showing them, okay, well here's how she made this, and you see this patch here, well she got this from when she was growing up as a little girl. They had this. I'm moving too far away from the mic, I'm afraid. Yeah. But there's all these different things. This old wood board that we have out here is from my great-grandfather's barn that he built by hand, when he was just in his 20s, and all of these things that define us as people, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And it's it's okay to embrace that. That's why, like world music, the genre of world music, that's what it's all about. It's about saying, okay, so we got a musician from Africa, a musician from Ireland, a musician from Australia. Okay, everybody come together. What do you got? Where do you come from? How do you do this? Where you come from? What is your music? And they combine it in a way to where it's culturally diverse, but it's diverse because everybody still gets to be who they are. And I wish we'd let ourselves do that in country music again. I wish we'd let ourselves be who we are instead of always thinking we've got to be like somebody else.
We're talking to Ryan Harmon. He is going to be singing on Saturday night downtown at sundown. Starts at 7 o'clock. The second part of that act is Nick and Sam. They will be right here in studio with us tomorrow morning, and of course that will air tomorrow afternoon. I am looking forward to having Nick and Sam on here. Ryan, we've already gone over time, so I'm just going to keep going.
I did it again.
Yeah, we've now expanded our format twice. But here's the best part. Here's the best part. We're not on TV. We can go however long we want to. I wanted to ask you, because you keep talking about this move away from what country music actually is. Then what is it? What does it look like to you?
Country music, it's not so much a sound. I love hearing fiddle and steel guitar just as much as the next country music fan, which happens to be you.
Oh, yes.
You're the next one.
I love it.
But it's not so much about the sound. It's not so much about the instrumentation. It's not so much about the arrangements. It's about what the music represents. It's the blues of the common folk. It's and a lot of it comes from blues influence too,
Yeah.
which is why it has the elements that it does. But it's about real life, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something different for everybody, but there's something there for everybody. It's songs about when you've had a really good day. Well, why did you have a good day? And how do you feel? It's not just good day, party.
Right.
Why? What happened? You got a little money in your pocket, okay, boss finally gave you a raise, or maybe you got laid off, but you got just enough money in your pocket to go out and have a couple of beers with your friends tonight, and you're going to tie one on, and who cares? You worry about it Monday morning. But you're going to tell me why you feel that way. Go into it. Dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
It's not just on the surface. It's not just, well, here's how I could feel. I'm so lonesome I could cry. He tells you why, and he tells you what it feels like. He compares it. The silence of a fallen star lights up a purple sky. The moon just went behind a cloud to hide its face and cry. It's a poetic description of the feelings that we go through, and it's something where you can look at the lyrics on a piece of paper even without the music, and you could understand that they know what we're going through. Good times, bad times, it's about real life. And as Marty Stewart says, it's about divorce, drugs, alcohol, jail, love gone good, love gone bad. Well, the last time I picked up a newspaper, those are still relevant subjects.
It's funny that you mentioned lyrics on a piece of paper. Let me tell you what I did with Jamie the other day. We were riding in the car, and we were having a conversation about, we were talking about music and how I have been kind of frustrated with the country scene myself, just as a music fan. And so I told her to look up the lyrics to the song, and I normally wouldn't call it out, but I'm going to call it out. The song is called Country Stuff. And I don't know if you've heard it. If you haven't,
I don't guess I have.
Don't. I told her, go look up the lyrics to Country Stuff and just read them out loud. And so she got her phone and she did, and she was reading. She's like, I like, and the lyrics are literally, I'm paraphrasing a little, but no exaggeration. Like, I like pickup trucks. I like my snuff green. I like country stuff, country stuff, country stuff. I'm thinking, this is the most unoriginal, hot garbage that I have heard in a long time. And yet it's going to sell 1 million copies.
Well, that's the thing. It's hard to argue with that success from the standpoint of, if you want to do this for a living and you know what sells and there's a market for it. There are people who love that. It's and that's the thing. It's like what I was saying earlier. it may not be for us, but there are a lot of people who love it. And I've got no problem with that, and they should get what they want.
Yeah.
And if that's what they want, great. I just think we need to take a closer look at what genre label we put on it. If the labels aren't important anymore, then don't tell me that we have a country radio station, a rock radio station. Don't put the categorization on iTunes and Amazon. Just leave it be. And I'll tell you what I think it is or what it sounds like to me. If you really want to blur the lines that much in the music, blur it everywhere else. You know.
See which rises to the top.
Exactly. And there could be some healthy, we keep coming back to that competition where there could be some healthy competition come out of that. I think we'd see a little more originality that way because everybody would realize, okay, we got to, now if we're all in the same ballpark here, we've got to figure out how do we rise above the rest.
Right.
And that, I believe, will be the point. However far we get into the blurring of the lines between other genres or anything like that, I think once it reaches the point where even the most contemporary country fans think that everything's getting a little bit redundant, I think that'll be the point where somebody says, okay, we got to start figuring out how to rise above everybody else. We got to set ourselves apart. And that's when the definition of country music will be important again.
I'm noticing your shirt, and we're going to wrap up.
I'm talking about country music.
Yeah, with a Kiss shirt on. And I just wanted to point the irony out on that. You're playing with another band, by the way, called Try It Quiet, which is a play on words, obviously. So, I mean, there's...
Did I tell you what happened with our first show?
No.
We're good friends with the guys at the Point 94.1 in Little Rock. And Mike Kennedy called Sharp one day because they used to do the morning show together. Mike goes, hey, Sharp, tell me about your band. What is it? He goes, oh, it's Try It Quiet. Okay, what do you guys do? Well, we play, rock music, country music, just kind of whatever we feel like doing. He goes, oh, I've been getting calls at the station all day about people asking for information on the Quiet Riot tribute band that's playing Friday. There are people who thought that we were a Quiet Riot tribute band. And, oh my gosh, we didn't even play any Quiet Riot. It was beautiful.
Well, but I can honestly see it because Sharp was in a tribute band for Kiss, right? Wasn't he
Sloppy
Kiss? Yeah. I mean, so
I didn't think about that.
I do kind of understand where the crossover comes from. You've got the Kiss shirt on. I have been a Kiss fan since I was little. My dad grew up on Kiss. He was actually one of the original members of the Kiss Army.
Yeah.
It was a bucket list concert of mine to go and see them, and I finally got to a couple of years ago. And even in their 70s, they still put on the greatest rock concert ever. Now, I know that some of the snobs are going to say, well, they're the most commercial band ever. I know that. But that doesn't take away.
I completely disagree because if they're the most commercial band ever, show me how many #1 hits they've had. They've been able to have the most success with the least amount of hits out of any band. You can throw anybody you want out there.
3, right? I don't even know that they had 3 because
3, maybe 4, as far as breaking into the upper part of the chart. Of course, Hard Luck Woman, Beth, Forever. I think Lick It Up charted. Maybe Tears Are Falling. No, Heaven's on Fire, I think, is the one that charted out of those. But outside of that, maybe a live version of Rock and Roll All Night charted too. I'm trying to remember for sure. But anyway, just a handful. And they don't even play all of them live now. So you're not going to hear Forever, and you're not going to hear Hard Luck Woman. I think you should, but that's, just because I'm a fan, I'd like to hear those songs. But yeah, they've been able to still sell out 20,000-seat arenas every night without having the support of radio and the mainstream all these years.
It's interesting that you bring that up too, because they were really pushed against when it came to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for all those years, and the fans finally got them in. And it's even more interesting to me because their biggest songs, I think, among Kiss fans, Rock and Roll All Night. Okay, everybody's heard that one. Detroit Rock City. I loved God of Thunder.
Oh yeah.
Double Platinum was just a great album from top to bottom. When they played in Bentonville when we went and saw them, it was basically like they played the set list that I wrote for them. Cold Gin. They don't ever do that live. That's my favorite Kiss song. They killed that. I mean, it's
still in the set, so you might want to go see them again before they hang it up.
It's still. They've been on Farewell Tour for 20 years, though, Ryan. I don't believe that they're actually. I mean, you know, they always said makeup don't crack. So I mean, that's that's why they wear the makeup. You can't. I mean, but going back to my question, I didn't want to ask necessarily about Kiss because we could talk about Kiss for another hour because we've now hit the hour mark.
Did we really?
Yeah, we have.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. It's great stuff. Paul Stanley just put out an album, a solo album. Have you heard it?
I've heard some of it. Soul Station?
Yeah. I want your thoughts on it first.
I think that that's more in his wheelhouse right now. I think that it makes a little more sense because some of the stuff he did in Kiss, now I can hear where that influence came in. Some of the stuff that didn't sound like anybody else, and I was wondering, man, how did he come up with that? It makes sense now because I can hear he had that soul influence to it. You can tell from that and the fact that Gene, just in the last few years, finally started doing solo tours. He'd never done that before. He'd put out a solo record, but he'd never done solo touring before. I think those guys are ready to do something else.
Yeah.
And they're ready to retire from the big picture thing and then just go on and do their own things, solo or whatever side projects they want to do from this point forward. But the little bit of it that I listened to, I can hear that that's what he's interested in doing right now. And it was, I didn't think it was going to be bad by any means. I knew it was going to be good because he had a good band with him too. Eric Singer's his drummer. But it was better than I thought it was going to be because it didn't sound like a novelty. It sounded like something he actually wanted to do.
I got completely the opposite impression.
Really?
I did. I thought it was all a novelty. It sounded to me like, when I saw the infomercial for it, the announcement that was coming, I thought, this is the cheesiest thing I've ever seen in my life. It looked like it was straight out of the 1980s or even before. And, you know, he's got the, and I was there. But, of course, I'm also the guy, too, that says of the 4 solo Kiss albums, I thought Ace Frehley's was the best.
I agree.
And I get some flack for that because
really,
yeah. I mean, Dad agrees with me because he thought musically it was probably the best put together. Because I think Ace is probably the best musician out of the 4.
When you put Ace and Eddie Kramer together, you're not gonna.
And then they picked up what was 2000 Man, originally a solo hit for Ace, and then they took that with them.
No, it was a Rolling Stones song.
Oh, that's right.
But it was one of his favorite Stones songs, so they put that on Dynasty.
That was oh my gosh. We could do this all day. And since we have already hit an hour, I will tell you folks that if you want more Brian Harmon, and how could you not, you need to check him out on Spotify. You're on iTunes too, right? Where can we find you?
All of the major digital platforms and some of the secondary ones. If you want to be sure where you can find me, go to RyanHarmonMusic.com. You can find me there every time. And of course on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, I'm at Ryan Harmon Music. I have a TikTok account, just haven't had the heart to set it up yet because I ain't figured out my dance yet. Right. I tell you, on the Kiss note, there's a reason that I wear shirts like this is because I may be a country singer, but I got a whole lot of this influence right here.
Oh, heck yeah.
And you're going to see that Saturday night because I've been waiting for this all summer long ever since we booked it. I'm planning on not having any energy Sunday morning. I'm going to lay it all out there on the stage Saturday night. If I pass out, I did my job. This is going to be the best show I've played all summer. I'm just going to tear it up as much as I can. Can't guarantee it'll always be in key, but I'm going to have a good time.
Hey, let's do it. I'm going to sing Saturday night. I'm going to introduce you like I've never introduced anybody. I'm going to go ring announcer voice. We're going to make this thing happen.
And in this corner, weighing, stop.
Stop. Just stop right there. Of course, if you want to hear more from Ryan Harmon, we're going to have him on KARV tomorrow morning. That's at 8:30 alongside Kristen Pearson to talk more about Main Street Russellville's Downtown at Sundown Extravaganza. It's Ryan Harmon and Nick and Sam coming up Saturday night at 7. Ryan, it's always a pleasure, brother.
Thanks for having me on, Drew. I appreciate it. You could almost put this as a two-parter, I guess, but maybe next time we're going to have our own radio show before it's all said and done because we could fill up a 4-hour slot.
Right, exactly. But the more that we talk about Tom T. Hall, I wonder how many people are going to listen to it.
Yeah, Tom T. Hall, and then we bookended that with Kiss.
You never know
That
what you're going
is
to
who
get.
we are.
That is the level of entertainment that you've come to expect from Ryan Harmon, and of course, the spotlight right here on Alathus Realty Live. Thanks so much for joining us. More Ryan Harmon on KARV tomorrow morning at 8:30. Tomorrow, right here on the Spotlight, it's Nick and Sam. Do not miss it. Next week, we've got Richard Sedian and more coming up on the Spotlight, so please check those things out. For now, my name is Drew Brand. Happy Thursday, everybody. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.